Welcome to Forthright, the podcast with, for and by women writers.
We have some brilliant guest writers lined up for you this season, covering a wide range of genres and experience.
We hope you enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to the Forthright podcast. I'm Sam.
And I'm Anna, and today we are delighted to have Ella Foote on. Hi, Ella.
Hi.
So Ella Foote is an author, editor and outdoor swimming expert. She is the editor of the Outdoor Swimmer magazine, the world's only monthly magazine dedicated to outdoor swimming. Ella's first book, How to Wild Swim, What to Know Before Taking the Plunge, was published last year. A renowned swimming journalist, Ella writes for all sorts of national media, often about the swimming, the environment, mental health or body image. She has had bylines in The Guardian, The Times, Stylist Magazine, The Simple Things, Countryfile Magazine and various other titles. She has appeared on several podcasts and has featured in a variety of television programmes. Ella graduated from Bath University with a creative writing and media communications degree and ambition to write books. She's currently working on a narrative non-fiction book about a decade in her swimsuit. The book explores parenting, not giving birth, body image, failing as a feminist, being a 90s romantic and making her passion for the water her career.
Oh, fabulous. I'm really excited to get kind of stuck into some chat with you, Ella. But you're going to do us a reading, which is great. So your book, obviously, How to Swim Wild, is whether you want to explore remote beaches and mountain lochs, improve your confidence in open water, refine your swimming technique, or have a race or long-distance swim challenge coming up. How to Wild Swim offers the perfect practical foundation to help you find your perfect adventure and achieve your goal. This body conditioning sport is praised for not only making us stronger and healthier, but also happier too. Wetsuits are optional. In fact, no expensive gear is essential. Nailing the how-to, however, is key. Expert wild swimmer Ella Foote offers the ultimate guide to mastering the practicalities and techniques and answers your most frequently asked questions so that you can feel safe, have fun and re-energise. So no matter what your goal, short wild swims and weekend breaks, to full adventure swimming expeditions and off-grid holidays, dive right in and submerge yourself in the wild, watery pages of this fearless book. Fabulous. So I think you said you were going to read from the introduction.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited to be here. I thought I'd do my intro because it kind of gives a good overview of the book and a little bit about me. It's called Diving In.
Fabulous.
Nothing sparks awe or evokes magic quite like swimming wild. It's a sensory experience that encourages childlike play and adventure. Rather than dodging a discarded plaster or untangling someone else's hair from your fingers in an indoor pool, outdoor water tickles you with weeds and reeds. In wild water, you encounter wildlife at earth level. Duck poo between the toes, and depending on the time of year, the sweet scent of water mint, damp, woody aromas, or musky, syrupy smells from flora and fauna. Wild swimming can be restorative, energize you, or offer transformation. Scuffed up shins, salty hair, or muddy feet, nothing makes you feel more feral. Swimming wild is different to just swimming. Outdoor swimming takes some consideration. Where you swim will have a huge impact on how you swim, what you wear, or what you take with you. Unlike lifeguarded and often warm swimming pools, open water is natural, ever-changing, and can be cold. How you find the water today will be different tomorrow, and no swim is ever the same. While I have always loved the water, I haven't always loved its wild unpredictability or the looming creatures that inhabit it. Though I came to realise that almost everything in the water is more afraid of you than you are of it, pretty much everything swims or moves away from you. Apart from jellyfish, they blob about with currents, tides and swell and still really bother me. I also didn't understand why people liked river swimming. There are a lot more weeds in rivers than in the sea, but like many things in life, the more you do something, the better you get at it and the more you learn. The sea will always be a deep first love and joy, my first wild water experience, but I fell in love with river swimming. This has been a slow burn that has become meaningful and essential. I discovered the joy of rushing, bubbling young rivers with deep pools, I found comfort in the reeds brushing my legs and the squidge of mud between my toes. I take great joy in journey swims from one place to another down a river, enjoying the vast widths and lengths ahead of me, and allowing the natural flow to push, float, or pull me downstream. Many sorrows and difficulties have been washed away in a river. Living away from the sea, I had to find water to love inland. As well as rivers, I've sought out lakes, ponds, and outdoor pools. My love of maps extended to being spread out on top of them, seeking, searching, and crawling over the paper with my fingers, looking for blue wiggles or blue blobs near my home or wherever I travelled. After years of training and swimming at events, across channels, down rivers, or looping in lakes, I decided to return to the water just for myself. I wanted to rediscover the magic and find new swimming experience and locations without the pressure to swim for a set period or distance. I wanted to swim just for joy, head down or head up. I wanted to rewild myself in the water. Around the same time, I changed my work and found a way to share my love of the water through writing, photography, guiding, coaching, and more recently, teaching. All my work today involves wearing a swimsuit. In a week, I tackle teaching children in a warm pool, guide clients down rivers or across lakes, and get to put all my experience and connections together into a monthly magazine for outdoor swimmers. After decades of swimming outdoors and writing columns of words about it in magazines and newspapers, it makes sense to pull this into something more useful. This guide will help rewild you in the water. It aims to answer any questions you have about whether it is safe or even allowed, and to reassure you that a simple swimsuit and towel may be all that you need, but also suggest what else to pack for a bigger adventure. I hope to point you in the direction of water you know and desire to dip into, armed with some knowledge to mitigate the risks. But above all, I want to ignite the wild magic and play within all of us to swim feral and free in blue spaces.
Oh,
Brilliant.
wonderful! I'd love the feral angle completely.
And also that all your work
resonates.
involves wearing a swimsuit as well. That's brilliant.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit in your bio that, you know, you've turned your passion for water into your career. And obviously part of that is swimming and then writing about swimming. And that's basically like the dream job. So could you just tell us a bit about how you kind of got into that in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely just followed my interest, and there's a quote from Paulo Coelho that I, you know, as a teenager, I loved Paulo Coelho when I was at university. That he wrote, "The whole universe conspires to help you when you follow your heart," and I really feel like this is sort of the circumstances that kind of got me to where I am. So I was working for a long time, just over a decade. I worked for the John Lewis Partnership. So I worked in John Lewis and Waitrose in various roles, but always editorial, always writing. And it was awesome. They were a great company to work for, and I got to do some really cool stuff, like interview David Attenborough.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
that's
a career highlight when I was at Waitrose. So yeah, it was a great company to work for, and I got paid pretty well as a journalist, which, you know, a lot of my friends and colleagues and peers outside of the business did not get paid so well. So I ended up getting sort of stuck there, but always had a desire to be a freelance writer. I always had sort of more of a long-term plan to write books. And I had an idea, because once I started sort of sharing a bit more about my swimming, lots of people wanted to come with me. And so I had an idea to do swim guiding. So I've got my own side business called Dip Advisor, where I take people swimming. So I had these sort of ideas ruminating, and at the same time, my work in the retail sector was changing, because retail was changing. You know, everyone buys online now. The high street, sadly, is in decline. And so I could see the writing on the wall, in the sense that I was working in a very indulgent corner of the business that spent money rather than made money.
Yeah.
I mean, we added value in many other ways. So they started talking about redundancies, and I kind of, you know, was encouraged and happily took redundancy. And the same year I got made redundant, Outdoor Swimmer magazine, which was back then called H2 Open, was rebranding, and they were bi-monthly, and they decided to move it to monthly. And the editor at the time asked me if I would become a regular contributor.
Oh,
so it was sort of one of those magical moments where I sort of left one sort of chapter and didn't really know what it was going to look like in this new way, but already like a window of opportunity opened in an area that I just love.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm very guilty of saying I got lucky, but I mean, I worked hard to get that opportunity. I've done a lot of bits and pieces of work and writing for both the magazine and the Outdoor Swimming Society for nothing, you know, voluntary, just trying to get myself out there. But yeah, it was definitely the universal lining.
Yeah, serendipity.
It sounds wonderful, and I think this idea, yes, is that, you know, follow your passion, follow what you love, so then work never feels like work either. And just when you're saying, you know, with the different kind of elements of what you do to make up your working week, what does that practically look like? Is every week the same? Are weeks different? You know, when do you find time to write within that kind of mix of everything that you do? What does your week look like?
So no week is the same, which might stress some people out, and it does occasionally stress me out. And I'm very guilty of saying to people, "Oh, I just need to get into routine. I just need to get into routine."
Same. I think we've been saying that for the last 30 years. Or something.
I don't know when, like, I need to just accept that I just don't have a routine, and I never have. I worked, you know, when I was working for the retail industry, I did work a Monday to Friday job, but it was still not routine. I wasn't always sat at a desk Monday to Friday. I was often out and about doing things. And I really enjoy that. If I'm sat too much in one place, I get a bit twitchy. So, yeah, no week is the same. The teaching kids, that was a pandemic panic. Mm-hmm. So in the start of 2020, I had lots of really exciting things that were lined up that sort of all got cancelled. And I did think, oh my God, I'm not going to have an income. So I actually used that time to train as a swim teacher. And, you know, went to work for a local swim school who I still work for now, but I'm now sort of a freelance for them. So I cover sickness and other teachers' holidays. But yes, for a long time, I had a regular shift where I taught every week, but now it's sort of a bit more sporadic. So yeah, most of the week is focused on the magazine. It's a monthly publication. So just as soon as we put one to bed, it feels like the next one's coming out already. So, you know, this week is press week for me, so I'll actually predominantly be mostly at my desk. So at least 1 week of the month, I'm very much home-based. Yeah. We've always worked remotely. But yeah, I mean, last week, you know, on Wednesday, randomly, I was at the Finnish embassy enjoying sauna in the basement of their embassy.
That sounds amazing.
Because they've got, you know, all their political buildings across the world have saunas. And they have this brilliant thing called the Diplomatic Sauna Society. And they said, would you like to come along? And you have a sauna and supper in the embassy. So I don't have a typical week, but with family life, that's sort of my anchor, I guess. Yeah. So I have a stepson who has been in my life since he was 2 years old. So he doesn't know a life without me, which means I'm very lucky that he sort of loves me as a third parent. And we live our life that way. He lives with us 50% of the time. So he always is with us the same days every week. And that's what sort of gives me a little routine. So I always make sure the days that he is with us, I'm also here. And I very much slip into my mum mode and domestic duties. But yeah, this last couple of months have been particularly crazy because I've been able to do a bit of travel. The travel industry is sort of tapping into this trend of outdoor swimming. And so lots of hotels and places are like now offering a swimming element, and someone has to go and try these things out.
How awful.
It's so terrible. So then in terms, I guess when you were writing the book though, when did you kind of make the time to do that?
Yeah, so that was a bit more difficult. I mean, I'm definitely somebody that needs a deadline and sort of a focus, like a plan. So the book was actually commissioned, so I didn't pitch for that. I was approached actually by a few publishers over a short time period, and I actually kept declining, which sounds mad when you're someone that wants to write books, but they all wanted a sort of either swimming spots, places to swim, or some sort of swimming guide. And I just felt like there was already a lot of brilliant books around that, and books that I read and use. But when I started talking to DK, so Jordan Kinsley, and they talked about an illustrated guide, if you ever pick it up, it's beautifully illustrated by this lovely illustrator who's actually Italian. She lives in Venice. I got really excited at the prospect of this beautifully illustrated version. So when we finally made a decision to go ahead with it, I literally planned out the chapters, and I said to them, if you don't give me deadlines, you'll never get it.
Yeah.
Because anything that's sort of just a back burner project for me will just stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very, they gave me very short, specific deadlines. So it meant that, I had to submit chunks of the book at stages. So that there's nothing that drives me more than having something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I use mostly weekends and evenings, if I'm honest. And any sort of corner of time I could, like many writers do. And it wasn't always easy, and it meant that some days were really long. But once I had a plan and a structure, it was quite easy to be like, right, today I'm doing this. And I guess with this kind of non-fiction book, it was a lot easier. I mean, now trying to do a memoir style book, it's a completely different beast. Mm-hmm. So yes, this was a lot more straightforward. And once I'd submitted everything to, in the first draft, I had some brilliant editors, and then they sent things back in chunks for me to relook at, which made it a lot easier. So I guess, like anything, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's writing or any kind of work, breaking it down, having a plan and having some deadlines is, the best way.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I personally, as a writer, work well to deadlines. Otherwise, it can just go on forever. But I'm just interested when you were talking about the difference between writing this and then the kind of memoir style book. So do you have a deadline with this one as well, or how are you managing your time with that to make sure that you're productive?
So at the moment, I'm trying to finish polishing my book proposal for my agent. So one of the best things about the current book is it forced me to kind of sort my agent out, get myself sorted. So I've actually had my memoir book on the back burner for about 10 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, back in, I think it was about 2016 or 17, I can't even remember. I actually went to interview Jenny Landreth, who has written lots of books, but the book at the time was called Swell, A Woman's History of Swimming. It's a brilliant book. But I was meeting up with her, and she actually introduced me to my now agent. But back then, when that book came out, and because I had this idea for a book, and that agent was like, yes, that sounds great, do a proposal. And that proposal has been there in the background for the last decade. And I tweaked it and played with it and changed it. And it's just changed. So when I got approached by Jordan Kinsley to do this How to Wild Swim book, I thought, actually, this is a perfect chance to get back in touch with the agent and then also get her to help me focus on the next one. So she's definitely been the one that's been like, right, now that's done. Where's this memoir that we've been talking about forever? So it's in the final stages before she can get it out. And she sort of said to me, there's no point sending anything out after June because everyone goes on holiday. Yeah. So I've got the rest of the month to finish it. But I find it harder because it's obviously more personal. And I'm terrible at rewriting and reading and rewriting. I'm just terrible at not just getting it down and constantly tweaking. So I'm having to be really disciplined to just getting stuff down on the page and then forgetting about it, because I will literally rewrite a chapter about 1 billion times.
Do you have readers then? Do you have, because it's quite do you have kind of beta readers or readers within your circle of swimmers, for example, who would read your work, who kind of understand that world? Or is it quite a kind of involved relationship between you and your agent in terms of having somebody reading through your work?
No, I have got a community of people, and actually I've been really, another like sort of universe delivering, I've been really lucky that actually once I got taken on by Outdoor Swimmer, one of the ideas I had was to do more with books, because swimming books were coming out. And so I'm in this sort of dream scenario where, you know, almost every week a book lands on my doorstep from somebody who's got a swim or nature or, you know, wild related title. So, you know, since I've been doing this role, I've interviewed multiple authors, met multiple publishers, you know, interviewed, read books. I've had a lot of exposure. In some ways, it's kind of been a bit detrimental in the sense that, you know, these books arrive, I'm like, well, I'm never going to write anything this good. You know, one of my first interviews with Amy Littrop, and obviously her books are fantastic, and one of them's coming out this year as a film, you know, and, you know, reading those sort of books and you know, that memoir style connection to the sea and nature, I was just like, oh, this is the dream, this is what I want. You know, it was really hard to then focus on my own story and my own writing. So it's been informative and kind of really educational to have that, but it's also been a bit of a distraction because, you know, you always think, oh, well, I'm never going to be able to write as good as this. But the flip side is, you know, some people like Sophie Pearce, who wrote The Green Hill, and, you know, used to work for the BBC. She's, you know, a journalist as well. Tanya Shadrick, you know, through meeting them, they've become really wonderful sort of unofficial mentors. You know, they'll happily read things. They'll happily, you know, meet for lunch and be a soundboard. And I actually went on a weekend with them. You know, I paid to go on a weekend with them that they were hosting for other people. And I think they thought it was a bit strange that I was doing that when I had lovely access to them just as sort of friends. But I wanted to specifically sit down with a group of other writers who were trying to do the same thing as me, and, you know, chat through ideas. And it was the most useful weekend because we did some very focused exercises and thinking. We read bits of our work. You got some active feedback. And it was quite confidence building because I kept thinking I was trying to do too much. And actually all they really did was encourage me to do it all.
Oh, and Tanya's work's incredible as well, Tanya Shadrick. I think the first time I met you actually was at an event that when her book was coming out, I think. Yeah.
I think that might,
you talked about briefly before about that you were quite inspired by the illustrations for How to Wild Swim. And did you have much of a involvement in the design of the book?
Yes and no. So once I'd sort of started the process, they were obviously sending things to the illustrator. We never actually communicated through the whole process of making the book until it was kind of almost out in the world, and then we found each other actually on Instagram. So we didn't have any kind of connection. Everything was done through the publisher, and it was quite funny because they sent me the first sort of chapters that had been pulled together into a design with the illustrations. And I loved it instantly. I didn't make any changes. And they were all a bit like, oh, wow, this is unheard of. Just because I just loved the style. It was exact. If someone said, oh, you know, we're going to make an illustrated book, and I imagined it, it would have been like this. So that was wonderful.
Yeah, they really are beautiful.
The only thing that we did go back and forward with a lot was the cover. So the cover was one of the last things we did. And there's all these beautiful swimmy illustrations through the whole book, bright, colourful, everything. And then the cover came to me and it was beige.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, this doesn't really say, you know, plunge in. And it had some sort of blue lines to indicate waves, but I just didn't like it. And it also reminded me of another book on the market, which obviously is a real challenge for publishers. You know, it's hard to come up with a new thing all the time. And then, you know, it was that thing about, does it look too beach and sea-like, and is it wild? You know, because I talk about all swimming, beaches, lakes, ponds. So it was trying to have something that could be both. But yes, I was a bit of a diva around the cover.
I don't think that's being a diva. I think that's just owning it. This is your book and you have a vision. I think, yes, it's really important to feel that, like, especially a cover reflects it. Because it's interesting, we talk about don't judge a book by its cover, but that's absolutely what we do.
We just do. Everyone does. And with so many swimming books on the market, I love it when you walk into somewhere like Waterstones and they've put a collection together, haven't they? Of like, well, these are all books about trees or whatever. If there's like a watery theme, they're all sort of blues and greys and it looks lovely. And it just would have stood out as like, well, is that even about water? And also, I'm not a very beige person. I'm quite colourful. Yeah. I like colourful clothes and it's nice to have something that reflects who I am.
So you've written the book about wild swimming. You're now writing your memoir. Do you think you'd ever venture into writing fiction, for example, or do you feel like you're very much within your kind of comfort zone and the things that you feel inspired with writing about reflections about real life things that are happening to you or in the world?
So that's interesting because one of my initial ideas for memoir came from in my 30th year. So I'm now 41. So in my 30th year, which was 2013, so not many people were really in love with outdoor swimming as they are today. I came up with this random project to swim 30 memorable swims in my 30th year, which lots of people do similar now, actually, which I love to see. But at the time, no one was really doing it. And it was a huge distraction from what was really going on in my life, which was I was in a terrible relationship. My career at the time wasn't going anywhere. And it was just, I didn't want to face into those things. So I came up with a swim project. So that was what the initial book was about. But when I initially started to try and write it, the relationship I was in at the time ended. And it was too painful and difficult to write about. So that was one of the blocks. And then as things moved on and, I healed, it actually became a bit irrelevant, some of the stuff. So one of my memorable swims was swimming with the editor of Outdoor Swimmer, but what it then was H2 Open, who's now my boss.
Brilliant.
So it was memorable then, but it's obviously a bit funny now because I talk to him every day. So yes, it's things like that sort of change. And so ever since I kind of initially started working on a different book, I've always thought, maybe I'll just write fiction. I interviewed Freya, I've forgotten her surname, who wrote The Tidal Year. I interviewed her and she was saying that with her book, The Tidal Year, she tried to write that as fiction first, but she was wrestling with it because obviously it was her story, but she was trying to make it into fiction. Yeah. And I tried to do the same, so I could really sympathise with her. It's like it was too hard to be really raw because memoir is, someone once said to me, it's like taking your clothes off in front of everyone and then reading your most intimate thoughts. So not only are you exposing your thoughts, but you're doing it while naked. Yeah. And I think she really battled with that, and then eventually she gave in and just really, went with the truth. And that's what kind of freed her, and she was able to create the book she has. And I think I was in that similar point that last year after this book came out and I spoke to my agent, I said to her, I do actually have a fiction idea, nothing to do with swimming especially. It was there was some truth, and it was about parenting and step parenting. And I had this whole sort of story arc, and she said, it sounds wonderful, but she was really honest with me and said, actually, right now, fiction is really difficult to sell. So she said, with, the kind of following I have and how I've built up, because unfortunately, this is how publishers work. They think about marketing, don't they? How can I market this book? Has this person already got an audience? And so I've been encouraged to finish this sort of new version of my memoir because that's what the public want. Yeah. That's what in the market is at the moment. That kind of style is really popular. Yeah. They think it will get more traction. The kind of work I already do means that I've already got a collective audience. So that's why I'm going in that direction. But we did start talking about this kind of dream scenario that we'd find a publisher who would buy my memoir and a second book that could be my fiction.
Oh, very best of luck with that.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting because at university, I very much thought I'd be a fiction writer, and the dissertation I did for my degree had to be a short novel. That was what we did. So I did that because you had to. But I never forget, I really chewed over that, and I wanted to write this really philosophical, mind-altering book. And my then mentor said to me, "You're 20 years old. You can't write that."
Ouch. So in obviously you are kind of fully immersed in the swimming and writing and the reading the swimming books as well. But do you have any time for reading fiction? And if so, what do you like to read?
So it's funny, I don't often get to read things I would go into a shop and buy necessarily. I'm in a very lucky, privileged position that books land on my doorstep.
Yeah.
But occasionally, I've just had the Lifeline pop through my letterbox, which is Libby Page's new book. And I read her Lido book when it came out, the Lido, which is fiction. And I do love fiction. And every time I do read fiction, I remember how much I like it, because I just love disappearing into stories and that sort of more fantasy world, even though it's often these books are based in a real scenario. So I do love fiction, but I do really love real life stories. So I've just bought Clover Stroud's The Giant on the Skyline. I've been waiting for this book just because I'm really interested in the themes she's covering around home. And I started this morning, and just everything she's talking about, the theme really connects with me. I often find myself drawn to books that are kind of associated with where I am in life. And my partner isn't British, she's from Portugal, and she's from the Azores, which is the best place ever to have to go with family. But she talks a lot about that kind of where is home, because her partner is in America, and whether she should move to America. And often we talk about where we're going to live and what our life is going to be like. So I was really interested in picking her book up for that reason. But equally, there's nothing better than getting lost in fiction. I mean, one of my kind of guilty pleasures, I guess, I hate it when people say that about books, but she's not well known, but her books, the author's Janet Ivanovich, and her books are about a bounty hunter, and they're complete nonsense. It's about this terrible bounty hunter that's really bad at her job and keeps a gun in a cookie jar, but I just love them. They're just, there's an element of mystery, and they're funny, and there's relationships. So
it sounds really fun.
To be honest, I read so many things that I just love. I just do. I am drawn to female writers probably more than men.
Sam and I are as well. We're talking the other day, but we're trying to actively remember the last time we had read a book by a man, and I think that's partly because of our podcast and other things as well. But yes, and I guess my final question to you, really, because we've absolutely kind of raced through having a chat with you, and I think for a lot of the people who are listening to our podcast, they might be coming at this from a new angle for writing and just starting out, or just trying to find their place with it. And from your perspective, I guess, what advice would you give, or alternatively, what advice would you give to yourself when you were starting out?
So one of the things we're kind of blessed with, it's a double-edged sword, but we've got access to people more than we ever had before, which, can be a blessing and a curse. But writers are incredibly generous people. If you can follow what they're doing, Substack's becoming a really wonderful place. And I'm seeing more and more people who are sharing snippets and bits of things they're working on that, I'm trying to think, Caro Giles, who wrote 12 Moons, beautiful book. She's writing some beautiful things on her Substack while she's trying to wrestle with fiction after having written a memoir. And I find that really useful. So I would say seek out writers or authors or pieces of work that inspire and ignite something in you. There's nothing. The hardest thing I find is you're reading a book and you think, ooh, and then it triggers an idea.
Yes.
Or you think, oh, this is kind of a great way to approach something or whatever. So, I mean, definitely the more you read, the more you kind of understand book structures, and you can really see the variety of how people write, to give you an idea of how to find your own voice and your own structure for your own work. So definitely, try to read things you wouldn't normally read. I would never have picked up nonfiction sort of in my mid-20s. And now it's predominantly what I read. So definitely try and push yourself to read other things. Connect. Don't be afraid to ask questions. But I think also just constantly writing. It's a bit like, some people say to me, I can't stand the thought of swimming in a river. How do you swim over the weeds and deal with this and that? And actually, when I first started, I was awful at that. I would close my eyes when I put my face in the water because I didn't want to see a creature looking at me and freak out. And I'd never swim over seaweed or weed because I didn't know what else was living in it. Now, none of that bothers me. And it's only because I do it all the time. And it's the same with writing. The more you read, the more you write, the more it just it literally will come out of you in the most sort of best form for you, for yourself.
That's a really lovely comparison.
And then once you've kind of got that idea, I mean, definitely a plan, break it into chunks, and deadlines are my 3 top ones.
Oh, that's absolutely fabulous. And thank you so much for all your time with us today, Ella. That's been brilliant. So if people who kind of aren't aware of your socials or anything already, do you just want to give us those so people can find you?
Yeah, so I'm Ella Chloe Swims on Instagram. The magazine, outdoorswimmer.com, is our website. And you can find all the magazine stuff and subscribe and read articles on our website. The book, How to Wild Swim, in all bookshops. It's also available in America, Australia. I think it's being translated into German and French soon, which is
that's
quite exciting.
Yeah.
I had to write it on a global view, so there are mentions of things like watch out for crocodiles and things like that.
You're not going to find one of those on the Thames, though, hopefully.
No, thankfully.
Thank you so much, Ella. It's been an absolute joy talking with you. And very much looking forward to reading your memoir when it comes out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Forthright podcast.
Check out our website, forthright.uk, for further writing resources.